My fiancé said I threw away the flowers your son bought for his mom's grave. It's weird that he still mourns her. I'm his mom now. I replied, you're right, it is weird. Then I canceled the wedding, packed her bags, and dropped her off at her mother's house with a note. I'm mourning my relationship now. Her meltdown on the front lawn. I'm 38 years old. Architect. My son Tyler is 11. His mother Sarah died 4 years ago. Cancer. She was 32. We'd been married for 8 years. Tyler was 7 when she passed. It destroyed him. Destroyed me too. We went to therapy, both of us. Separately and together. Took 2 years before we felt like we could function normally again. I met my fiancée Jennifer about 18 months ago. She's 34, works in real estate. We met at an open house. She was showing the property. I was looking for something bigger for Tyler and me. We hit it off, started dating. She seemed great with Tyler. Patient, understanding, asked him about school, about his interests. He liked her. That mattered to me, more than anything. 6 months in, she moved into our place. Tyler was okay with it, said it was nice to have someone else around. Jennifer cooked dinners, helped with homework sometimes, watched movies with us. It felt normal, like we were building something. I proposed 4 months ago, small proposal. Nothing fancy. Tyler was there. He seemed happy. Jennifer cried. Said yes. We set a date. June wedding. 4 months away. That was when things started changing. Small things at first. Jennifer would make comments about Sarah's pictures. We had a few around the house. One in the living room of the 3 of us at the beach. One in Tyler's room of him and Sarah at his 4th birthday. Jennifer asked why we still had them up. I said because Sarah is Tyler's mom. Jennifer said I know, but I'm here now. I said that doesn't erase her. She dropped it. For a while. Then she started talking about redecorating. Said the house needed a woman's touch. I said it has a woman's touch. Sarah picked out most of this stuff. Jennifer said exactly. It's outdated. Time to move on. I said I like it the way it is. She said you're holding on to the past. I said I'm not holding on to anything. These are just things. She said fine. But after we're married I want to make some changes. I said we'll talk about it then. Tyler visits Sarah's grave every Sunday, has since she died. We started going together. Then he wanted to go alone. Said it felt more private. I understood. I'd drive him there, wait in the car. He'd spend 30 minutes talking to her, telling her about his week, bringing flowers, fresh ones every time. He'd use his allowance, save up for weeks to buy them. It was important to him. His way of staying connected. Jennifer knew about this. I told her early on. She said that's sweet. Said it showed Tyler had a good heart. I agreed. She never came with us. Said it felt too personal, that she didn't want to intrude. I appreciated that. Thought it showed respect. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago was a Sunday. Normal day. I drove Tyler to the cemetery. Dropped him off, waited in the parking lot like always. 40 minutes later, he came back, longer than usual, empty-handed. That was odd. He always brought the flowers into the cemetery. I asked if everything was okay. He said yeah, but his voice was quiet. I asked if he forgot the flowers. He said no. I asked where they were. He said he left them at home. I didn't push it. Figured maybe he wanted to bring them next week. Next Sunday, same thing. No flowers. I asked if he wanted to stop and get some. He said no, it's fine. I said, are you sure? He said yeah. We drove to the cemetery. He went in, came back 20 minutes later, shorter than usual, got in the car, didn't say anything. I asked if he was feeling okay about visiting. He said yeah, I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. I could tell. 3rd Sunday he said he didn't want to go. I asked why. He said he just didn't feel like it. I said, Tyler, you haven't missed a Sunday in 4 years. He said maybe I need a break. I said okay, but talk to me. What's going on? He said nothing, I'm just tired, I let it go. But I was worried. This wasn't like him. That night Jennifer and I were in the kitchen. Tyler was in his room. I mentioned I was concerned about Tyler not wanting to visit Sarah's grave. Jennifer was chopping vegetables. Didn't look up. Said maybe he's finally moving on. I said moving on from what? She said from mourning. It's been 4 years. Kids are resilient. He's probably ready to let go. I said he's not letting go. He's processing. She said he's 11. He shouldn't still be this attached to someone who died. I felt my chest tighten. Said someone who died. That's his mother. Jennifer put down the knife. Said I know, and I'm sorry she died, but I'm here now. Tyler needs to accept that. I said accept what? She said that I'm his mom now. I stared at her. Said you're not his mom. Jennifer's face changed, said, "Excuse me." I said, "You're not his mom. You're my fiancée. Sarah is his mom." Jennifer said, "Sarah is dead." I said, "That doesn't change anything." She said, "It changes everything." We argued for an hour. I told her she was being insensitive. She said I was being unrealistic, that Tyler needed to move forward, that keeping Sarah's memory alive was preventing him from bonding with her. I said, "That's not how grief works." She said, "Maybe you're the one who hasn't moved on." I said, "This conversation is over." She said, "Fine." Slammed the bedroom door. I slept on the couch. Next morning was tense. Jennifer left for work early. Didn't say goodbye. Tyler came down for breakfast. I made pancakes, his favorite. He ate quietly. I asked if everything was okay. He nodded. I said, "You know you can tell me anything." He said, "I know, Dad." I said, "Even if it's about Jennifer." He looked up. Said, "What do you mean?" I said, "If something's bothering you about her being here, you can tell me." He went quiet. Then he said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Of course." He said, "Do you love her more than Mom?" My heart broke. I said, "Tyler, no, I love your mom. I'll always love your mom." He said, "But you love Jennifer too." I said, "I do, but it's different. Loving Jennifer doesn't mean I love your mom less." He said, "That's what Jennifer said." I stopped, said, "When did Jennifer say that?" He said, "A few weeks ago. She said you loved her more now, that mom was the past." I felt my blood pressure spike. Said, "She said that to you." He nodded. I said, "What else did she say?" He said, "She said I should call her mom, that it would make things easier." I said, "What did you say?" He said, "I said no. She said I was being difficult, that I was hurting her feelings." I stood up, asked where Jennifer was. Tyler said she's at work. I said, "Did she say anything else?" Tyler looked down, said she said the flowers were a waste of money, that mom couldn't see them anyway. I said, "When did she say that?" He said, "The first Sunday, 3 weeks ago." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I had the flowers ready. Jennifer saw them, asked what they were for. I told her. She said it was silly to spend money on flowers for a dead person, that I should save my money for things that matter." I asked what you did. He said, "I didn't know what to do. So I hid them in my room." I said, "Hid them?" He said, "Yeah. I was going to bring them next week. But when I went to get them, they were gone." I asked if he looked for them. He said, "Yeah." I asked Jennifer if she'd seen them. She said no, but I knew she was lying. I asked how he knew. He said, "Because I found them in the outside trash, still wrapped." She threw them away. I felt rage, pure rage. I asked if he got them out. He said they were ruined. The wrapping was torn. The flowers were crushed. I said, "I'm so sorry." He said, "It's okay." I said, "It's not okay." He said, "I just didn't want to make you choose between me and her." I pulled him into a hug. Said, "Tyler, there is no choice. You are my son. You will always come first, always." He started crying, said, "I miss Mom." I said, "I know, buddy. I miss her too." I called my office, told them I wasn't coming in, called Jennifer. She answered on the third ring, said, "What?" I said, "We need to talk." She said, "I'm with a client." I said, "I don't care. Come home." She said, "I can't just leave." I said, "Yes, you can. Come home now." She heard something in my voice, said, "Fine. I'll be there in an hour." I spent that hour pacing, thinking about every interaction Jennifer had with Tyler, every comment she'd made about Sarah, how I'd brushed them off as adjustment, as her trying to find her place. I'd been blind, willfully blind, because I wanted it to work, because I wanted Tyler to have a mother figure, because I was lonely. I'd prioritized my needs over my son's well-being. That ended now. Jennifer walked in 50 minutes later, said, "This better be important." I said, "Sit down." She said, "I'd rather stand." I said, "Sit down." She sat. I said, "Tell me about the flowers." Her face went blank. Said, "What flowers?" I said, "The flowers Tyler bought for Sarah's grave. The ones you threw away." She said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Don't lie to me. Tyler told me everything." She said, "Tyler is confused." I said, "He found them in the trash." She went quiet. Then she said, "Fine. Yes, I threw them away." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because it's weird." I said, "What?" She said, "It's weird that he still mourns her. She's been dead for 4 years. He needs to move on. I'm his mom now." I just stared at her. Those words. Exactly what she'd said. I replied, "You're right. It is weird." She looked surprised. Said, "See," I said, "It's weird that you threw away flowers meant for a dead woman. It's weird that you told my son to call you Mom. It's weird that you think 4 years is enough time to stop grieving." She said, "That's not what I meant." I said, "That's exactly what you meant." She said, "You're twisting my words." I said, "No. You said what you said. I heard it clearly. She started backtracking, said she was just trying to help. That Tyler needed structure. Needed to accept reality. I said the reality is, his mother died. That's his reality, not yours. She said I'm trying to be his mother. I said he has a mother. She's buried at Riverside Cemetery. You're just someone who lives here. She said that's not fair. I said you know what's not fair? Throwing away flowers an 11-year-old bought with his allowance for his dead mother. That's not fair. She started crying, said she was trying her best, that this was hard for her too, that she felt like she was competing with a ghost. I said you were never competing. There was no competition. Sarah is his mother. Nothing changes that. You could have been something different, something important, but you chose to make it a competition, and you lost. She said, what are you saying? I said, I'm saying we're done. She said, what? I said, the wedding is canceled. We're over. She said, you can't be serious. I said, I've never been more serious. She said, because of some flowers. I said, because you threw away my son's flowers and told him to stop mourning his mother. Yes, because of that. She stood up, said, you're overreacting. I said, get out. She said, what? I said, get out of my house. She said, this is my house too. I said, no, it's not. Your name isn't on the lease, isn't on the mortgage, you just live here, and now you don't. She said, you can't kick me out. I said, you can leave now voluntarily, or I can pack your things and you can deal with the legal mess later. Your choice. She said, where am I supposed to go? I said, I don't care. Call your mother, call a friend, call a hotel, just get out. She said, I'm not leaving. I said, then I'll pack your things and drop you off. She said, you wouldn't. I said, try me. I went to the bedroom, started pulling her clothes out of the closet, throwing them into suitcases. She followed me, screaming, saying I was being crazy, that I was throwing away our relationship over nothing. I said, this isn't nothing, this is my son. She said, I love Tyler. I said, you don't love Tyler. You love the idea of playing house, of being a ready-made mom without putting in the work. She said, that's not true. I said, you threw away his flowers. She said, I made a mistake. I said, you made a choice. Choices have consequences. I packed 3 suitcases, carried them to my car. She followed me, still crying, still pleading. Neighbors were watching. I didn't care. I put the suitcases in the trunk, went back inside, got her toiletries, her shoes, her laptop, packed it all. She said, please, can we just talk about this? I said, we're done talking. She said, what about the wedding? I said, there is no wedding. I'm calling the venue today. She said, you'll lose the deposit. I said, I don't care. She said, what do I tell people? I said, tell them the truth. Tell them you threw away a child's flowers meant for his dead mother's grave. See how that goes. I loaded the last bag, told her to get in the car. She said no. I said, fine, walk to your mother's. She said, my mom lives 30 minutes away. I said, then you better start walking. She got in the car. We drove in silence. She cried the whole way. During the drive, I scribbled a note on a piece of paper from my glove box, kept it in my pocket. I felt nothing but cold clarity. This woman had hurt my son, had thrown away his connection to his mother, had tried to erase Sarah from our lives. I'd almost married her, almost made her Tyler's stepmother. The thought made me sick. We pulled up to her mother's house. I got out, started unloading bags. Her mother came to the door, said, what's going on? I said, ask your daughter. She said, is everything okay? I said, no. I handed Jennifer the last bag, pulled out a note I'd written, handed it to her. She opened it, read it. The note said, I'm mourning my relationship now. She looked up, said, this is cruel. I said, you threw away flowers meant for a grave. Don't talk to me about cruel. Her mother said someone needs to explain. Jennifer started sobbing, saying I was being unreasonable, that she'd made a mistake. Her mother looked at me. I said she threw away flowers my son bought for his deceased mother's grave, then told him it was weird to mourn her, that she was his mom now. Her mother's face changed. She looked at Jennifer, said, you didn't. Jennifer said, I was trying to help. Her mother said, by throwing away flowers. Jennifer said, he needs to move on. Her mother said, Jennifer. She turned to me, said, I'm so sorry. I said, tell her. Not me. I got in my car, drove away. Jennifer called 17 times that day. I didn't answer. She texted, said we needed to talk, that I was being irrational. At every couple fights, I blocked her number. She called from her mother's phone. I blocked that too. She showed up at my house 2 days later. Tyler and I were having dinner. She rang the doorbell, banged on the door. Tyler looked scared. I told him to go to his room. I opened the door. She looked terrible, eyes swollen, hair a mess. She said, "Please, can we just talk?" I said, "No." She said, "I made a mistake." I said, "You made multiple mistakes." She said, "I'll do better." I said, "It's too late." She said, "Don't I get a second chance?" I said, "Not when it comes to my son." She said, "I love you." I said, "You don't love me. You love what I represented, a ready-made family." She said, "That's not fair." I said, "Life's not fair. Ask Tyler. He'd tell you." She started crying again. Said, "Please." I said, "Leave, or I'll call the police." She left. I canceled everything. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the florist, lost deposits on all of it. Didn't care. Called my family, told them what happened. My mother cried, said she never trusted Jennifer. My brother said good riddance. My dad said I did the right thing. Called Jennifer's friends who'd been invited. Told them the truth. Some said I was overreacting. Most said they understood. Didn't care either way. Tyler and I went to Sarah's grave that Sunday. I went in with him this time. We both brought flowers. Tyler's were roses, Sarah's favorite. He'd saved up for weeks. I watched him place them on her headstone. Watched him talk to her. Tell her about school, about his friends, about how he missed her. I added my flowers next to his, told Sarah I was sorry. Sorry I'd almost let someone erase her from Tyler's life. Sorry I'd been so desperate for companionship that I'd ignored the signs. She would have been furious with me. Rightfully so. Tyler asked if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, buddy. I'm okay." He said, "I'm sorry about Jennifer." I said, "You have nothing to be sorry for." He said, "I feel bad." "You were happy with her." I said, "I wasn't happy. I was comfortable. There's a difference." He said, "What's the difference?" I said, "Being happy means everyone's happy. You weren't happy. So I wasn't happy." He hugged me, said, "I love you, Dad." I said, "I love you too." We don't talk about Jennifer much anymore. Sometimes Tyler asks if I'm lonely. I say, "No, I have you. That's enough." He says, "Maybe you'll find someone else someday." I say, "Maybe, but only if they respect your mom." He says, "Do you think anyone will?" I say, "The right person will. The right person will understand that loving someone new doesn't mean erasing someone old." He says, "Mom would have liked that." I say, "Yeah, she would have." I ran into Jennifer at the grocery store last week. She was with someone new. A man. He had a kid with him. Young girl, maybe 6 or 7. Jennifer saw me, looked away. The man asked if she knew me. She said no, just someone who used to live in her building. I kept walking, heard her talking to the girl, heard her say something about how pretty her hair was, wondered how long until she tried to replace that girl's mother too. Hoped the guy was smarter than I was. Doubted it. Tyler's doing better. Visits Sarah every Sunday. Brings flowers every time. I go with him now. We talk to her together. Tell her about our week, about the good things, the bad things, the normal things. Tyler started saying, "I'll see you next week, Mom," at the end. Like she's just away, not gone. I like that. It feels less final, more like she's still part of our lives. Because she is, she'll always be. People ask if I'm dating. I say no. They say it's been months since Jennifer. I say I'm not ready. They say Tyler needs a mother. I say Tyler has a mother. They say you know what I mean. I say no, I don't. They drop it. I'm fine alone. Tyler and I are fine. We have each other. We have Sarah's memory. That's enough. Maybe someday someone will come along who gets that. Who understands you. Don't replace people. You just make room for new ones. Until then, we're good. The wedding was supposed to be this weekend, June 15th. Instead, Tyler and I went camping. Sarah loved camping. We hadn't been since she died. Felt right to go now. We hiked, made s'mores, told stories about Sarah. Tyler laughed, really laughed, said he wished Mom could see this. I said she can. He said, "Do you think so?" I said, "Yeah, I think she sees everything." He said, "Then she saw what Jennifer did." I said, "Probably." He said, "She probably didn't like her." I said, "Probably not." He said, "Do you think Mom is mad at you for dating her?" I said, "No. I think she understands." Tyler said, "Good. I'd hate for her to be mad at you." I said, "Me too, buddy. Me too." Best decision I ever made was choosing Tyler. Choosing to protect his grief, his memories, his mother. Jennifer wanted me to move on. Wanted Tyler to move on. But grief doesn't have a timeline. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Tyler will always love his mother, will always visit her grave, will always bring her flowers, and anyone who becomes part of our lives needs to understand that, needs to respect that. Jennifer didn't. So Jennifer's gone, and we're better for it.